Welcome to One-on-One with B'nai B'rith International. I'm CEO Dan Mariaschin. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope everyone is staying home and finding ways to stay grounded. We hope our conversation today will help ensure that physical distancing doesn't turn into social isolation. Very pleased today to have as our guest Israel's Minister for Regional Cooperation, Tzachi Hanegbi. Tzachi joins us today from Israel on the eve of Pesach, on the eve of Passover. Tzachi has been a leader in the Likud party for many years. He was elected to the Knesset in 1988, and over the years has held a number of very important ministerial positions. He was Minister of Health and Minister of Justice, Minister for the Environment. He's been Minister in the Prime Minister's office, and really has had his hand on the pulse of Israel's public service and Israel's life over decades in the service of his government and his country. So Tzachi, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Don. I'm happy to be Zooming with you all today.
Well, we're all learning as we go with Zoom, and it's really been a blessing for everyone because it's enabled us to really stay in touch. I want to start the conversation today with a look into how Israel has been handling the coronavirus. I know that there have been several organizations who have rated Israel number one in how it has addressed this terrible crisis. So from the perspective of a former Minister of Health and from the perspective of an Israeli, how do you see the situation today regarding this crisis?
It's a big challenge. Days are sad all over the world and also here. We lost the lives of 60 people, 60, and every life is a whole world for his family, for his friends. But altogether, we are aware of the problem that might occur once you lose control. So the policy of flattening the curve is the strategy of every country, but also of Israel. I think that the good news were that the Prime Minister in the beginning of the crisis understood that harsh measures and decisions must be made. And we closed our borders, first to flights from China and the East, and then from all over the world. And later on, everybody that came from the world, because still people, Israelis, had the right to come back home. So they had to go to isolation for 2 weeks. And then we began checks, intensive and massive checks all over the country. So altogether, what we see now, as we speak, we see that there is some light at the end of this tunnel, but it's the beginning of the beginning, and we are still committed to do whatever is necessary to prevent us from collapsing.
How much do you think that Israel's struggles over the decades with so many crises, most of which were existential crises, due to your borders and due to the wars and other upsetting and deeply concerning challenges that Israel has faced, how much of that in the Israeli DNA has helped all of you to deal with this crisis?
No doubt it's helping us because unfortunately, we are used to times of challenge. We are used to times that we have to suffer for a while till things get better. You hear Israelis all over the place. They say, we, as a nation that struggled for thousands of years, and we're not broken by the Babylons or the Romans or the Greeks, and later on the Turks and the English. terrorists or suicide bombers or rockets. So altogether, we, of course, believe that we have the spirit, we have the resolve, we have the mental readiness to do whatever is necessary to get out of this hole. Still, on the individual level, it is not easy. So people cannot really think like they're people or they're a nation. You know, they have their kids to take care of. They have the fear, individual fear that they suffer from. But I think that as a society, we have been through so many challenges that it makes us stronger in this specific demand or test.
Now, Israel, of course, is known as startup nation, and it has really fueled the Israeli economy now for a number of years, and still does. International leader in innovation. Yet, there are many people, as a result of this crisis, not necessarily working in that sector, but are working in many other sectors, who are not working today. Going forward, God willing, once this crisis is over, what are your ideas about getting the economy up and running again, and getting people back to work?
Well, I'm very optimistic. I believe that once this crisis is over, I'm sure there will be changes. You know, the social distancing is not going to evaporate immediately. It takes time to do it. People will still have to make sure that they keep their hygienic and every regulation that we are following now might still be relevant, like gloves and masks and other such demands. But altogether, since the economy now is totally paralyzed, I believe that once it's open, it's going to be open in a very strong way.
I'd like to move, if we can, to the formation of the new government in Israel. Their talks are going on. We're now on the eve of Pesach, and there's perhaps an opportunity, another window here of 24 hours to perhaps effectuate a deal. What do you see going forward? Will it happen before we sit down to the Seder table, or is this something which will go on into next week?
It better work out. You know, you mentioned that before, that I served in the Israeli parliament for over 3 decades now. I also served in 5 different governments, and 2 of them were unity governments. And I can be a witness for the fact that a unity government is always much more effective and powerful and capable than the narrow government that is fighting for its very survival each and every day in the parliament. So for a long time, more than a year now, we had 3 consecutive elections. And you know how bad it was for the cohesion of the Israeli society. But now we believe that we see a change. We see the 2 main leaders, Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, meeting for hours and hours in the prime minister's house, working together to build a new coalition. I am sure it's going to be important for each and every Israeli, those from the right and those from the left, to find that we can reach a common denominator, reach a consensus, and work for several years without the hostility and animosity that characterized the last several months and even a year.
So, shall I say that you're optimistic that this will happen soon?
I think so. I don't know if it's going to be before Passover, maybe yes, but the practical announcement will probably be brought to the parliament after the holiday, and then a new government will be established. And we'll work together for as much as We hope for 3 years. Hopefully, it's going to happen. The major task now is joining forces vis-a-vis the coronavirus challenge, but maybe through working together and building trust and personal chemistry between the parties and the leaders, maybe we will be able to work together and find the right way to work together in other issues that were so far were divisive and not uniting us.
Now, you were Minister for Regional Cooperation, and over the last decade, Israel's outreach to the world has really produced some important relationships. I'm thinking of India as one example. In return to East Africa, West Africa, relationships are being established all the time with countries that heretofore Israel either had relationships many years ago, broke off, and now are coming back. I'd like to focus, if I can, on the Middle East, the Gulf states, for example. Where do you see, after this crisis is over, where do you see regional cooperation going in your region, but also in other places around the world?
Well, it's not a secret then that in the last decade, and especially the last 3, 4, 5 years, and not because I'm the Minister of Regional Cooperation, but because of the changes in the region, we have seen a new recognition of Arab leaders, Muslim leaders, that Israel is no longer the enemy. And is not only a potential partner, Israel can be an asset to their very existence when it comes to their fight for survival against Iran's ambitions in the region, against the global terrorism, especially the Islamic terrorism, against jihadistic forces like Daesh. So altogether, what we have seen is a ever expanding readiness and motivation to make their connection with Israel more public. Still, most of it, I would say 95% of it, is under the table, is under the radar because of reasons that you can understand. But even though we have seen a visit of the Prime Minister in Oman, we have seen a meeting of the Prime Minister with the leader of Sudan, both Muslim countries, Arab countries. We have seen a decision of Saudi Arabia to allow flights of Air India from Israel to India twice a day over their territory. We've seen Israeli ministers visiting Gulf states for formal occasions like sport or judo or other meeting, but it was really a token of or a sign or a proof for the new reality. And I hope that in the years to come, we will be able to have many more such relationships and more public and less hidden.
Well, one of the things, of course, clearly that has brought Israel and the Gulf states together is the Iranian threat. But there's also another aspect to this growth in Israel's relationships with the rest of the world. And I would point to go back to Startup Nation. I think that there's so much that Israel has to offer in the 21st century that I assume that has had a lot to do, leaving the Gulf states out for a second, but that's had a lot to do with the outreach and the response to Israel's outreach in the rest of the world.
Yes, definitely. And you have mentioned some of the new achievements that the government achieved, the relationship that we have today with India, with Brazil, with Argentina, with Japan, with China, with Russia, with Africa. This is unprecedented. Even in the best days of the peace process of Oslo back in the 90s, we did not have such intimate relationship between leaders and between institutions. And many of that is thanks to the fact that Israel is perceived, and rightly so, as an empire of technology, startup nation, the innovation, the knowledge, also in issues that has to do with security, like cybersecurity, intelligence. So altogether, you do see the need of those countries to cooperate with us. We have our needs too. It's not a one-way street. They can help us also in many, many dimensions. So altogether, it's a win-win reality, and we have to further it in the years to come.
There's another subject that has been on the minds of all of us, this spike in global anti-Semitism. You and I were among the speakers at a very important conference on anti-Semitism that was held in Rome a few years ago. And this is a subject that is deeply concerning to us here in the United States and in other countries around the world, in Europe, in Latin America. From your perspective, from the perspective of an Israeli, looking at this global phenomenon, what do you see?
It's probably an eternal campaign. Anti-Semites are not disappearing. Sometimes they are more embarrassed to expose the bigotry, the hatred, the blindness, and sometimes they are more confident. So what we do, we must do, is to make it something that is illegal, that is considered in their society as a shameful behavior. And for this, you need education, you need the ties with the political leadership, you need the media. And this is what is being done by so many Jewish organizations, of course, with cooperation, coordination with Israel.
And to that, the adjunct here to the global anti-Semitism that we see, and we see it in Western Europe, and we see it here in the United States, is BDS. And we know that the government of Israel, there is a ministry which focuses on BDS globally. How would you measure that issue as it relates to the broader picture of anti-Semitism?
You know, when we considered establishing a special ministry fighting the BDS movement, there were many voices making sure that their reservations are known. And they said, this is some kind of exaggeration, a special ministry that has to deal with it. You're just making this phenomenon as bigger than it is. We knew better. We understood that this is not a challenge that can be taken lightly. And you need the best people to fight it. And you need the budget to afford those people to fight it. And you need a consistent brainstorming to understand and to analyze and to find solutions. I believe that this ministry is not going to disappear, and is going to be strengthened and to be given more and more powers, because it's doing a great job. And it's, of course, not eliminating the problem, but it allows us to see the problem in its real perspective and to find many, many good ways to confront it. And so far, I think with a lot of success.
Tzachi, I have one final question. You have a long and distinguished career in government service, but some years before you entered the Knesset as a young man, you were also the national chairman of the National Students Union as a campus activist. What message do you have for young people today at a similar stage in their lives in terms of what one can do as a student and then going forward, looking forward in one's life to make an impact on society?
Well, being a student is probably the best time of your life, especially for Israelis, because we just finished the army. We were working hard for 3 years to make the country secure. And then we feel that we are a little bit in a race. We lost 3 years for the cause, for the defending the country. And now we want to do whatever we can to go equipped into the civil life. And when I was the leader of the student, I had to fight against this sentiment. People were not indifferent, but they were troubled by the fact that if they will go into public life, they will lose some time for their academic achievement. And I told them, this is only going to enrich you. This is only going to give you a much broader understanding of your society, and how can you be influential and make a difference. So I do think, and I still think, that people that are entering public life during their school days, during universities, are gaining from it. They learn leadership, they understand the media, they understand how the country works, they work hard in order to make people commit, be an example, and all this is very good for the next stages in their life, even if they will not pick politics as their major occupation. Wherever they'll be, in business, in academic life, in media, they will be much more equipped and powerful and strong.
Well, that's a good message to end in, particularly on the eve of the holiday. Tzachi, I want to thank you for joining us today, for bringing us up to date on issues which we Jews, whether we're in Israel or in the diaspora, we're deeply concerned about together. We want to wish you the best of luck going forward, and a Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Don't forget to put masks, to not shake hands, and all the hugging and kissing that we as Israelis and Jews enjoy to do. Let's do it in August.
Okay, that's words to live by. Thank you. Our guest today has been Tzachi Hanegbi, Israel's Minister for Regional Cooperation. And thank you, everyone, for watching One-on-One with B'nai B'rith International. Please visit our website, bnaibrith.org, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. And lastly, tell a friend about us. For my distinguished guest, Tzachi Hanegbi, I'm CEO Dan Mariaschin. We'll talk to you next time. Stay safe, everyone.